the rewards that you kind of experience as a business owner aren't that. They are you like reminding yourself that you've overcome yet another obstacle that was put in front of you and somehow managed to pivot yet again. It's you looking at the cash flow sheets that you've spent hours doing and being like, okay, they're done. And they show positive results. It's you, having a customer come up to you and be like, this shit's the best. I love this shit. Or, like they're very small. And this author once said, I can't remember his name, but it was from a Celtic book. And he was like, opportunity is often no louder than the beat of your heart, and therefore it is easy to miss.
Oh.
And that's kind of the same as what rewards in small business is that they're often no louder than the beat of your heart, and they're very easy to miss and get like buried in all the to-dos and the missed tasks and the mistakes you made, especially when you're doing it on your own.
Welcome to the Weekly Transit. Interviews and conversations from an astrological lens. There's nothing more fascinating to me about this earth than the people who inhabit it. My mission is to create deep, vulnerable, and open conversations that invite our unique guests to share the arc of their ever-evolving journey through life in the hope that their stories inspire and resonate with you, our listeners. I'm your host, Scott Tejerian. Welcome to the Weekly Transit. I am here with Lise Richard. Lise is someone that I've worked with for several years. We worked together on a weekly basis for, 6 months, a year or so. But very, very interesting and accomplished woman, Lise. She is a business owner. She owns the Tofino Hot Sauce company. She makes her own hot sauce from scratch. She's also an accomplished athlete, and I'm excited to talk about all of that with Lise. Lise is a Libra Rising, a Virgo Sun, and an Aries Moon. And I'm so excited to have you here, Lise. How are you?
I'm well, Scott. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to do this with you after working together for so long.
Yes. And you're a longtime listener of the podcast, so now you'll get to listen to yourself on the podcast, which might be kind of surreal.
I started listening in 2022, a 3-year-long listener this year.
Wow, cool. Well, thanks for listening in.
Yeah, I think it was actually even August of 2022, and you and Ingrid were essentially my entire winter of 2022. How much I would like prepare for the weekly transit. I'd get like wine, I'd get my journal out, and I'd be like, okay, it's time for the transit.
Cool, I love it. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So tell me, Lise, who are you? Where do you come from? Where do you come from? Like how did you get into, hot sauce? Tell me about your athletic ability and where'd you grow up? Let's start there.
I come from Blair and Kathleen Richard, my mom and dad in Nova Scotia. I was born in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. So east coast of Canada and the Maritimes, just there above Maine, New Hampshire. And now I live on the exact other coast in a rural community called Tofino, British Columbia. And that is basically just above Seattle. So coast to coast Canadian. And I grew up cooking with my mom and my dad. Preserving was a really big thing. Family dinners was a really big thing. And food is a quintessential part of the Maritimes of Nova Scotia. People people don't talk about the Maritimes of Canada without also talking about food. And we're the kind of people that when you're having breakfast, you're talking about lunch, and when you're having lunch, you're talking about dinner. Um, but I studied environmental science in university at
Well,
St.
before
Francis Xavier
before you go
University. And
there to the environmental studies, because I want to hear about that, but I want to just take a little more time with Nova Scotia life. So, like, you're an island woman. You grew up on an island. You live on an island now, on the other opposite end of the
well,
continent.
fun fact, Nova Scotia is a peninsula.
Oh, it's a
It's not an
peninsula.
island.
It's not an island.
It
Okay.
is,
What is there an
yeah,
island over there?
yeah,
Is
yeah.
there
So the
is
Amherst, there is Prince Edward Island,
Prince
which
Edward
is
Island? Okay.
in yeah, yeah, which is a little small island just in between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick.
Okay.
It's super cute, wonderful place. But no, Nova Scotia is connected to the entirety of Canada by way of um, the, gosh, the Avalon. I think it's called the Avalon Peninsula, but it's where Amherst, Nova Scotia is, and that's yeah. So we're a peninsula, but I am. And Dartmouth is a pretty big city that where I grew up. It's very similar to a city over here called Victoria, 350,000 people.
Oh,
But
wow.
what is yeah, the forming part of who I am though are the summers and Christmases and vacations spent in the more rural parts of Nova Scotia where my dad grew up, in a place called Charles Cove, Guysborough County, and where my mom grew up in Cape Breton.
So you talked about preserving was a big thing that you learned from your parents, and I
Hmm.
just have to wonder,
Yep.
like, because the winters I imagine are pretty cold where you grew up in
Yep.
Dartmouth, Nova
Yep.
Scotia, and there's not a lot of fruit or vegetables that are growing like in the area during the winter. So is that like preserving is to help get you through the winter? Is that part of what that is?
Yeah, that's where it started. And when I was doing it with my mom, it was more so an act of historical engagement or retaining cultural practice. My parents are what you could otherwise say are pretty big nerds, and they love history, they love family history. And they really took a lot of pride in the different histories that made up who they were and subsequently made up who I and my brother am. And so it was very important to my parents that my brother and I learn a bit about the Scottish, the Polish, the British, and the Acadian heritages that we came from. And pickling and preserving different kinds of foods was a part of that.
What were some of those foods?
Oh, we did everything from we canned seafood, we canned rabbit, we made rabbit pâtés or meat pies. We did uh, pickled cucumbers, pickled carrots, anything in a brine, and then we always did a huge batch of strawberry jam, and other types of jams. If I was, my British grandmother ate a lot of marmalade, and so I liked trying how to make marmalade
And
and
what
that
is
kind of stuff.
marmalade?
Yeah, always
What
just
is
throw
in
up.
marmalade?
Marmalade is a British thing, and it's orange and lemon jam.
Orange and lemon jam. I mean, I've heard of marmalade, but I didn't know what was in it. So it's orange and
Yeah,
lemon jam. Okay.
it's a citrus jam. Yeah, with
Citrus
like
jam.
chunks in it,
Okay.
a citrus jam. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I found
Cool.
it funny that because that grandmother was a British war bride, and she came over uh, after World War II to the rural edges of Nova Scotia to be a lighthouse operator, and she had to be quite a self-sufficient woman. But I always found it funny that she, out of eating eel and harvesting barnacles and harvesting periwinkles and doing all this like really hyper self-sufficient local stuff, she'd always have marmalade. Like this
Huh.
is so exotic for such a
What are
for such a country
periwinkles?
woman.
What are periwinkles? What is that?
Those little shells that attach to the rocks, and
Okay.
they're like little sea snails,
Uh-huh.
I guess, but
Okay.
not quite escargot, but they're
Yeah.
very little, and they're called
Uh-huh. And
periwinkles.
she would harvest those
And
and
you can
eat them.
wrap. grab them off the rocks and boil them and take a little prick and eat them. They're so, I don't like them, but
Is
they were
this your maternal or paternal grandmother that you're talking about?
paternal,
Paternal. And so
paternal, my
she
dad's mom.
came from England or Scotland.
Hmm.
Which one?
England.
England. And she came
England.
post World War II to Nova
Hmm.
Scotia. And so,
Hmm.
did she meet your grandfather in Nova Scotia, or did she meet him in England?
In France,
In
in
France.
World War II.
So she was in France helping to fight against the Germans. Is that
Hmm.
like, what was she doing in the war?
I believe she was a medic, a
Okay.
warfield medic.
And
And my grandfather was infantry.
for England, your grandfather was
Canada, but he
Canada.
spoke French because of Acadian. Yeah,
Okay.
my grandfather was a French speaking. So Acadians are a blend of French settlers and Mi'kmaq indigenous people. They're a form of Métis people, Acadians, and they speak French.
Okay. So Mi'kmaq is a native tribe to Eastern Canada.
Hmm.
And because the
Yes.
French were the first ones to sort of settle from Europe in Canada, that's why some of the native people, they learned to speak French, and they're called Acadians because they're a mix of the native and the French bloodlines.
Kind of, yeah, yeah, kind of. You've gotten it there. French were among the first of the European settlers to Nova Scotia. Uh, and within the French colonies, there was a group of people that called themselves Acadians, I believe. Or there was a group of the French settlers that were just really like big farmers into agriculture, into God, and they were very passive type people. And they really got on with the Mi'kmaq because the Mi'kmaq knew the land so well, and because these French people were such ardent agrarians, they just, the Mi'kmaq knew the lands, and Acadians knew how to change. The French knew how to change land, and so they basically they just got along. They didn't come to like totally colonize. They just like landed, and they were like, "Hey, you guys seem cool. Let's like hang out. I like your daughter." So, I'm pretty sure is how it probably went.
So and so
And
that
they lived in peace for
yeah,
years and years and years. And then there was the expulsion of the Acadians, which is quite a famous historical
what was that?
piece of Canada, where the British took over in Nova Scotia, and they were forcing the Acadian settlements to swear an oath to England. And part of this oath was that they would bear arms for England. And they said, no, we don't bear arms for anyone. We're passive people. And and it also said that you would put kingdom, country, and queen before God was part of this oath. And
Hmm.
they were like, no, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
we can't sign on to that.
Yeah.
And so they said, well, if you can't sign on to it, you can't live here. So they gathered them all up. They put them in the belly of a boat, and they shipped them. They basically lived 2.5 years in the belly of a boat, going back and forth across the Atlantic between Europe and the United States, Boston, and all that, going back and forth, being rejected. No, we don't want them. 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 And then eventually they got dumped off in Louisiana, and that's Cajuns.
Oh. Oh wow. So Acadian
Mm-hmm.
became Cajun. Wow.
Yeah, because
Oh wow.
when they were saying who are you, who are you, they were saying l'Acadien. It's like spelled L apostrophe
Uh-huh.
Acadian, l'Acadien. And the way they spoke so fast, it got blended into Cajun. But a lot of like my same familial ancestors, you can find the same bloodline in uh, Louisiana and
Wow.
the like Creole. Yeah.
So you descend from Acadians. That's one of your lines. And that is
Mm-hmm.
your
Mm-hmm.
grandfather who went to Europe, to France to fight the Germans and met your grandmother who is an English nurse. Okay. And then he
Mm-hmm. Well,
brought her.
I come
Yeah.
from all very, very hardy folk. Like she obviously was a hardy woman to be willing to go be a medic in the war or
Mm-hmm.
even be part of the war efforts.
Mm-hmm.
Acadian people, they suffered greatly as oppressed people in Canada.
Wow.
And then also the Mi'kmaq lineage that would bisect into my French Acadian lineage and everything that we know with how Indigenous people were um, treated in Canada, especially in Eastern Canada, where the first contact was made.
Mm.
And then on the other side, I have a grandmother who comes from Scottish immigrants to northern Nova Scotia, and a Polish grandfather whose family descends from war immigrants
So
to
that they
the coal
came.
mines of Cape Breton.
Okay. So the Polish grandfather came to
Was World
the
War One
World War
immigrants.
One immigrant. And then your
Mhm.
grandmother, who he married, she immigrated from Scotland when?
Along to her people before.
Long
Um,
before.
so my grandmother was born in Cape Breton, but she her I believe her grandmother was an immigrant from Scotland.
Mm. Okay. It's a very
So I'm the true
rich.
Canadian mutt. This is
Yeah.
what we are.
Yeah. You've got a little Indigenous, you've got a little Scottish, a little Polish, and a little English. And the Acadian,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
French. So, do you speak
Yeah,
French?
the French. I used to. No, I don't anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
Didn't
Wow.
practice long enough.
So you grew up in Nova Scotia. You played. What were your? You were athletic. You were. Tell me about
Hmm.
your connection to the water.
Just overall athletic. I didn't participate actually too much in water sports growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I would sail with my uncles and be on the water, but we mostly just swam.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and loved the water. But the sports that I participated in were land based, were gymnastics, basketball, snowboarding. In school, I would do any sport because it got you out of class. So I was on every team because it was way easier to run fast than it was to do math.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it was a good tactic. But then, yeah. And in university, college, I played basketball for university and college, and just stayed active my whole life.
What
But
was your position
uh,
in basketball?
when I moved to Vancouver Island, oh, I was a shooting guard, small forward.
Okay, and where did you play in college?
It was a small college in Nova Scotia called Mount St. Vincent University.
Okay, and you played all 4 years.
I played just 2 years, and then I switched to St. Francis Xavier University. I wasn't good enough to play for them for basketball, but they had the degree program I really wanted.
And
So
that was
I
environmental
caved,
studies.
and yes,
So you
yeah.
didn't know that you were into you were already in college when you decided that environmental studies was the direction you wanted to take.
At Mount St. Vincent, I had started with human nutrition. I
Mm.
thought I had wanted to be a clinical nutritionist, and I was very health obsessed my whole life. I was a
That's very
personal
Virgo
trainer,
of you.
obsessed with nutrition, very Virgo, very Virgo. Health and wellness has been a top priority since I was a wee child. Obsessed with, yeah,
I love it.
yeah. I had such healthy teeth when I, as a child, that they were considering having to like drill out all my teeth because my baby teeth were refusing to leave my mouth.
Oh my
They were
God.
just like, no. Yeah, because I was so
Wow.
like, oh, you got to take care of your teeth. Mom said you got to take care of your teeth. So,
So what does that mean,
um,
taking care of your
and
teeth? You like brushing all the time, or is it the food that you're eating,
I
or?
was obsessed. Yeah, brush before I eat, brush after I eat, floss, rinse,
Mhm.
like massage your gums. We're talking like an 8-year-old kid. This
I
is what
love
I
it.
was
That's
doing.
crazy. That's wild. Like 8-year-olds don't want
At
to ever
like,
brush their teeth. And you're
yeah,
like, I'm going to
at
brush my
9
teeth
years
5 times
old,
a day.
obsessed. At 9 years old, I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning secretly. I'd sneak downstairs and I'd turn on the television to the one channel that we didn't totally get. We only got like 4 channels, but the one channel that was like an infomercial channel. And at 9 years old, I would secretly and obsessively watch the Jack LaLanne power juicer
Oh, yeah.
infomercial.
Wow.
And just like, one day I'm going to own a Jack LaLanne power
I used
juicer.
to own a Jack LaLanne power juicer. That was my first juicer, was a Jack LaLanne power juicer. I had that for over 10 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. They were, and so when I learned about like Virgo and astrology, and I learned about Virgo's obsession with health and wellness and image and stuff, I was like, oh, behaviors that I had previously thought were fully psychotic, I was like, now make total sense.
I love it. I love it. And the athletic part of you also shows up as well with like the Aries Moon. You're like emotionally fulfilled by courage, confidence, but also your Mercury, the planet of coordination, is conjunct with your Mars, the planet of action. So the planet of action, the planet of coordination together, that's what helped create you as an athletic person. I see it in a lot of athletes.
I do quite love it.
Yeah. Yes.
But I've always been a bit of a Rudy type, I felt. Like I've always been full of the fight, but not really full of the results. Yeah, Sean Austin or Sam Austin and I really understand him in that character.
Yeah, Sean Austin, yeah. But the thing is
Sean Austin, yeah.
Rudy was still good enough to even be on the team. He may not have been the star of the team,
Yes.
but like think of all the people that
Yes.
would just like to be Rudy. I want to put on the gold helmet and play for Notre Dame. Like how many people, like even if you're the last player on the team, you're still good enough to be on the team.
He made the team.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like how many people?
That's always been my claim.
Exactly. Like you played basketball in college for 2 years at a small university in Canada that probably hardly anyone in the United States has ever heard of, but you still were on a team. Like how many people can say that they even played competitive sports after high school? I mean, not many. So
yes. And especially not many women. So it's a real, lots of women fall off the athletic course. But when we were working together in the Cosmic Pathway, and there's something that I really took to heart when you were just like, look, if you have something stressful coming up or something big coming up, go lift something heavy for a little while.
Yes.
Before you have to do it.
Yeah.
And I really take that to heart. Like before I do a lot of things that I'm kind of worried about or stressed about, or have a conversation that I'm kind of worried about or stressed about, I go like just move heavy things around for a little while and get a lot of that, because otherwise I get shaky, I get sweaty, and I get really like there's so much that boils up from that Aries
Moon. You gotta go chop some wood, go for a run, like, exert yourself in a way that's like masculine. And when you do that, it's like, okay, now my emotions are calm. I feel good. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Lise.
Yeah.
So you went from nutrition, that's where you started, and then you transitioned to environmental health, environmental studies. Well, how did that transition occur for you?
I went into nutritional science because I thought I just saw this like plague of a misdirection happening in society between us and our diet and us and our food, and the like the never ending complexity of this system that didn't have to be as complex as it was becoming. And so I went into nutrition, but at the time, nutrition was really for clinical nutrition, which is like in a hospital with really, really sick people. It wasn't a lot of preventative. And holistic nutrition was not really available on the East Coast. On the West Coast here, there's a lot of alternative colleges that have holistic nutrition. But I went into nutrition science and I really enjoyed it. I loved learning about, especially as an athlete, how the fuel of the body works in the body. But at the same time, there was a lot of things coming up about the environment. So I started university in 2003. And a lot of things were starting to pop off, especially in Canada, about the oil sands development, about changes to the ocean and the atmosphere. And I started feeling um, I kind of started feeling like nutritional science was dabbling a bit in narcissistic science. I was like, oh, okay, there's a way that this is involved in making people healthier, but why do a lot of people want to do it as vanity? And if we're not taking care of the system at the root of it, it doesn't matter how many oranges, and we're actually experiencing this now, where like an orange has significantly less nutrition in that orange than was in the 1950s or an orange in the 1970s, because the ground is so depleted. So I thought, okay, how can we make healthy people if we don't have a healthy planet? And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go do that,
What is the
because
oil?
I felt really,
Yeah. Continue. Sorry, I just had a question, but
I
I'll
just
ask.
felt like I was compelled to having my career be something that helped make the world a better place.
What was the oil sands? What was that you were saying? The oil?
The
Can you?
oil sands is a oil and gas development project that began. I'm pretty sure they broke ground in about. Well, they came to my attention that they were being more expanded. I'm pretty sure they were being mined and oiled and explored well before, because the oil and gas in Canada's northern part has been active for a very long time. But what they are is kind of they are a silty, sandy deposit of oil and gas in the northern parts of Canada that can be processed for bitumen, which is one of the lower grades of what you can get out of oil or gas. Like bitumen is, because it's full of particulate matter. So it takes a lot more processing to get it kind of out of the ground and get it into a usable format. It often burns dirty, and it often doesn't burn as efficiently as other forms of oil and gas. So it leads to um, it's been said that it can lead to a dirtier uh, exhaust, like particulate matter after being burned as well as being exhumed. So this is a project that's now been expanded in Canada. It's well under development now, but at the time it was the whole stop the Tarzans like push. Yeah. So, but now
Mm,
it's
it
well
already
underway.
happened. Yeah. So they didn't stop
Yeah,
it.
it did. No, 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 there was no chance. But it was an interesting thing to be a part of and understand and learn in such like a formidable part of my life. And and through it was a really great move, because studying environmental science gave me a really great opportunity to see the world and to learn about the globe in a fully different way that I don't think I would have had an opportunity to do in nutrition science. And just kind of really round me out as a person, because you learn about so many other people's lives in comparison to your life when you get to have a global perspective.
Can you share some of those experiences? Some of the meaningful ones, most
Well,
meaningful ones for you?
I don't know how much this might have to do with me in astrology and astrological zone, but I do try hard. I'm a real try hard. And I don't know. I guess I come by that honestly. I come from a bunch of tryhards. But if I'm trying something, I want to win at it. And
That's the Aries
so
Moon.
when I went in, I want to win.
Yeah, I want to be number
Um,
one. I'm the best.
yes, I.
Yeah.
And so when I went to St. Avex, it was really fun. I was having a great time learning everything, and we noticed some gaps as students. So we formed a new student society that led to me wanting to be part of the university student society because, I'm bossy and I know what's best for everybody. So let me get up there. Let me get in control because, and that was my, and so I just worked my way up, and that got me experiences with political leaders, organizing speaker campaigns, and then subsequently I was also a representative of the Canadian youth to two separate global climate negotiations with the United Nations.
Wow.
So I got to go to Indonesia in 2007 for the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change there. That was creating the Bali Roadmap. And went
What
as
was
part of the
that all
Canadian
about?
youth delegation.
Yeah. What happened there?
So that's the global summit. That's the global summit where world leaders and their negotiators and industry representatives, research representatives, everybody around the world who has the chance and money and opportunity to go to this summit goes, and they debate and they negotiate global climate policies.
Okay.
This
And
is
so
where the
what? And
idea of
so
like,
what did
we're
what
going
did
to
you?
reduce our emissions by 25%,
Yeah.
blah, blah. This is where that stuff all gets decided and agreed upon.
Do you remember how you fit into that whole conversation in 2007
Scott,
as a
yeah,
Canadian
it
student?
was so, oh God, it was so invigorating to go. I had never in my adult life traveled internationally.
Wow. Cool.
We were going as a group of 21 Canadian youth. So there was another gal from Halifax who went, and she and I paired up and flew together. It was 32 hours of flying to get there.
Wow.
Uh, we were going as youth to talk about the tar sand development and the loss of the boreal forest, the commodification of Canadian resources to the point of failing fish stocks, multiple different provinces. Like we were kind of talking about, and also we wanted to talk about what's called substa. So we wanted to talk about this. How Canada should be more financially responsible for the technological development of underdeveloped nations that are disproportionately impacted by global climate rise, but not being as contributive to the issue. So that was kind of our positions as Canadian youth, very intellectual. And I was there with so many smart people. I felt totally out of capacity. I was like, we were 21 Canadian youth of an overall 550 youth from around the world.
Wow.
Who we would gather into the same room, auditorium room, every day as global youth. We would give reports to each other and kind of update each. And that's how I got this introduction. You just met kids from so many other countries who are in the same pursuit as you, but in such different ways, about famine, about burning coal inside of houses. Like you're just learning about, wow, that's such a different grade of problem.
Wow.
That, and like what we complain about as kids versus what you experience as your general life. Like it gave me such a good life lesson in terms of gratitude and compassion, understanding privilege, and understanding that, not having guilt about where you come from, but just that this is like, you get to be happy, so be happy about things. And it was really eye-opening. But the way that I was there was I was a firecracker. I was a young kid. I decided to be the brazen one of the group. Everybody else wanted to go through like the channels that we were supposed to go to try to get to into meetings with these global leaders. No, I walked right up to them. I shook their hand. I said, "Hello, we are the Canadian youth and we'd like to have a meeting with you. When can that happen?" I did that to leaders of the UN. I did it to leaders of Canadian Parliament. I was a little rude and cheeky to our Minister of Environment at the time, Minister John Baird.
What
Yeah.
happened? What? Tell that story.
He was at a party instead of being at a presentation where we went as Canadian youth. It was angled as like in the write-up that he was going to be there with the Canadian Environment Ministry and they were going to be talking about tangible things that they were going to do. And instead, it was an industry presentation from a bunch of different fuel manufacturers, whether we're talking like biofuel or oil and gas, about how they were going to reduce their emissions. And we were like, this is crap. We came to hear from our government, not from industry reps. So I went to the party where he was. I snuck in and I found him.
Okay, and
And I said, hello, you're John Baird. And he went, I believe it's Minister Baird.
oh,
And I went, well, sir, if I may, minister is a title of respect, which I don't think you deserve in this moment.
wow. Okay,
and I told him why, and he said, "Thank you very much for your opinion." I was sweet about it. I wasn't total. I was,
well, you're a Libra
I wasn't
rising.
inflammatory.
You're a Libra rising. So when you're in those uncomfortable situations, you're very charming because Libra is the sign of balance and fairness and it's ruled by Venus. So I imagine like a young, beautiful, charming young Canadian comes up to him and he's just like, he's probably smitten with you, even though you were insulting him.
Well, I mean, I think he was. I don't think so. I think he was pretty off put, and I told him why, and I was like, "We'd love to have a chance to meet with you."
Okay.
And he blew me off. I mean, he is in the hires, right? But
Yep.
this was the role that I played. And then the only other thing I did was every day in that meeting with 550 kids, I would take everybody's order for what they needed for lunch because the UN conference was so expensive we couldn't afford it, and I had found a local restaurant owned by a family just like 2 blocks outside of the convention center. So I would take orders, hundreds of orders. What do you
Wow.
want? I'd write it down, kid name, and then their country rep, how to get it to them. And then I would text it to this family restaurant. And then in a brigade of scooters, we'd go as kids and we'd pick up these hundreds of meals and then we'd bring it back so that everybody could be fed and eaten and think properly and behave properly because they had meals. So that's a
Wow.
funny thing. I don't remember
Wow.
doing that, but that's interesting how it might play into the hot sauce.
Oh, I mean, seriously. And also just thinking of your astrological code with, your sun in Virgo, which is the sign of service. And it's in your 11th house, which is the house that represents the community, the group, the coalition, the organization. It's like this is why you have such a you identify with the social cause. Like, look, like I'm not just speaking to John Baird, Minister Baird, as an individual. I'm speaking on behalf of this coalition of Canadian youth. And you have to answer to all of us because you identify with the group. But also just thinking in what you had
Mm-hmm.
said earlier, how you like being in charge. I mean, you have 3 planets, Mars, Mercury, and Venus, all in the 10th house, which is the house of achievement and authority. And Mars is exalted in that house. And your Mars is aligning with your moon, that makes you even more courageous than just being in a Aries moon. You were born with an Aries moon, but with Mars, the planetary ruler of Aries, aligning with the moon from Leo. So very bold of you to go up and speak to the minister and to just go up and talk to these people that are above your title or your position. You're like, I don't care. You have that attitude of like authority and queen and open heart, courage. You see it all there in your chart, but at the same time very humble and very wanting to be of service, not being in that position of power and bold expression for your own gain. You're doing it to be of service to the group, to society,
Mm-hmm.
to our community
Mm-hmm.
of earth.
I did.
Yeah, I love it. I love that story. What an amazing experience. So that was your first time out of the country internationally, and it
And it
changed
wasn't my
you.
first time out of the country. It was my first time in adult life out of the country. My parents
Okay.
had taken us to the States and we went, but just myself as like an
Yeah.
adult, it was my
The
first time
States,
traveling.
it's like when I was a kid, I went to Mexico, I went to Canada. It doesn't really like that. Just feels like an extension of where you already are. Like when you get on a
Yeah,
plane and
kind
you
of.
fly over the ocean to go to some place that's on a
Yeah,
different continent. That's when
that's
it
a big
feels like
one.
that feels a little different. Like
Okay.
because I mean, as a kid going to Mexico or going to Canada, it felt like a different version of California. It didn't feel that
That's
far,
true. Yeah.
didn't feel that different from where I already was. I went to Europe for the first time, or I've been to South America. It's a little different than that. So I can imagine going to
That's
Asia
true. We
is
went to
like
Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and it was just kind of like it was just like different versions of Nova Scotia and the Maritimes. It was just like you could get cherry cola and pretzels in bags. Yay.
It's hilarious. Oh my god, it's so funny. So
Yeah.
that was in college, and you did more trips like that
Mhm.
through this like delegation, or
Just one more. The next year, I actually wound up getting to go to Poland
okay,
for
the
the same climate
motherland.
negotiations, but this time I was the motherland, exactly. But this
Yeah.
time I was with a political affiliation. So I was with the Green Party of Canada as
Uh-huh.
a youth representative with them. So I had been working politically at that point for the Green Party. I was a campaign manager for Elizabeth May's 2007-8 election campaign and got to go to Poland and the same climate negotiations
And is the Green
there.
Party like a party that is their focus is environmental concerns? Is that what that means?
That's how they started for sure.
Uh-huh.
So Canada, we don't have liberal Democrat. We have political parties, and so we have predominantly the Liberals, the NDP, and the Conservatives, and the Green Party is a bigger, smaller political organization, and they focus on economic development as well as, but keeping everything under an environmental focus for sure.
Hmm. So what are the party systems in Canada? Like what is your Democrat Republican? Is there more than two
So
parties?
we essentially have like one Republican Party. There's conservatives, you could say, is otherwise the Canadian Republican Party.
Uh-huh.
But then if you have the line over here where we have like three Democratic kind of parties that you could pick from, being the Liberals, the New Democratic Party (NDP), and the Greens. We
Okay.
also have another party that's specific to one of our provinces called the Bloc Québécois. Because Quebec is so big, they have a leader that gets to be in the debates and stuff, Bloc Québécois. They're very partisan. They're very Vive le Québec, Quebec
Mm.
first,
Mm.
French. Yeah,
Okay.
so but they'd still kind of be classified as like a democratic kind of party, I think.
Right.
I think,
Okay.
I would say.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so you went to Poland. You did that. How was that experience in comparison to Indonesia?
That was so different. I I went as a really different person. I had been part of the political scheme for a while at that point, and I was a lot more serious there. But because I had already established a lot of the connections from the year before, I was able to be a lot more serious. I still snuck in places. Like if you walk into any room confidently, it really is rare that a security guard is going to stop you. I promise. I've done it so many times.
You just acted like you belonged.
If you just walk in with your like spine straight and your head forward and you nod at people and you say hello, good evening,
Yeah.
most of them will let you in.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy.
I love it.
So there I was a little bit more strategic, and but I still was quite subversive, but a little less bold or ostentatious. Bold in other ways, bold with like a smooth edge now instead of that kind of like rough cut diamond.
I think about that exchange with you and the Minister Baird, John Baird, and I think of your Mercury squaring your Saturn, the planet of communication squaring the planet of authority, where you have to work to soften those rough edges when it comes to being bold or expressing your heart to the authority. Because like the more bold you are, the more you might get shut down, so you have to maybe finesse it a little bit. But I think about that in terms of like your north node too, in Taurus in the 7th house. It's like you're here to be a negotiator and a negotiator of your values, but in order to get your point across, you need to be the bull at some points, but where the bull is stout and gets in your face, but other times you need to be more serene and just kind of receiving. What do they want from me? What are their interests? Because once I know their interests and I'm clear about my interests, then we can figure out a way to work together. So is that true?
It's taken me a long time to kind of, and I'm still not very much there, but I'm definitely a lot better in my 20s trying to do these sustainability programs. It went well, and I did well, and I had a successful career because I have a vivacious personality. But there was a lot of times that the way in which I love challenges, it really doesn't translate to most other people who don't find challenges so addictive.
Yeah, well, they're not Aries moons.
And so that was very challenging for me in my profession. I was so confused as to why people didn't want to broach these changes in life that would be better for like these things and we all have that from your perspective, from anybody's perspective on a topic, what seems to be so easy and make the most sense, and why isn't the whole world just doing this? From the person on the other side of it, they're just like, because that's the hardest shit you could have ever asked me to
do. Yeah.
And you're sitting there being like, what do you mean? No, it's not. And they're like, so that was really challenging for me in my professional career. And it led to the change, actually. It eventually became such a frustration for me that I was like, I don't know, like why I've been in this industry now for 20 years and the data is only getting worse.
So it's like you're putting all this work in and it's not helping.
Well, and the shift seems so easy. In the last program that I worked on, it was active and safe routes to school. I was literally telling parents, I'm trying to make your life easier by letting go of this task that youth seem to have taken. Our generation walked and biked to school. Now you are driving your child directly to the door, and then you're wondering why they're struggling to learn math or sit still or be a good student, because they've gone from bed to breakfast to car to school seat. And how do you expect them to learn? You give them that fresh air, you give them that activity before school, and you take it off of your plate that, I'm rushing around in the morning trying to get them to school, the traffic to the school. The schools actually account for a lot of the congestion that most major cities face today. It's
Because so
not,
many
it's all
parents are
because of the
driving them. Yeah. Hmm.
directly to the door.
Yeah.
And part of what I was asking these parents was just drop them off 5 minutes away. We found these little key parts that you could get safely. And even doing that, the amount of resistance that I felt, parents threw things at me. They
What?
were yelling at me. They
What?
were basically saying, yes. Oh, I couldn't believe it. What these parents in these school groups were doing. They were like, you're out of your mind. And they'd throw my papers that I had handed out to me. Do you even know what kind of threat these kids are? And I was just like, oh my gosh. And so I was like, I got to take a step back, because 20 years in, I thought this stuff was obvious 20 years ago, and that all anybody needed was just to be exposed to the information. And now here we are 20 years later, they've all been exposed to the information and they are fighting it tooth and nail.
Wow.
And so I was like, I got to step back. I don't know how to fix these problems. And I don't think I have the stamina to continue, to continue
So what were you
without
doing?
being frustrated and angry.
Yes, yes. And I'm assuming that's when you decided to transition into food.
I had already been working in a kitchen as a sous chef part time, uh, during that contract, because I had moved to Tofino by that point, and Tofino is a very small town, and I know from small town Nova Scotia that the best way to get involved in a small town is to get involved in the small town.
Yeah,
So I didn't want to be
absolutely.
someone who lived here and worked elsewhere on a contract. I wanted a job in town, so I got that little part time job, that turned into my full time job for years after I left the environment industry.
So you were working in environmental work for 20 years after college. And then you started to
Yeah,
straddle that work with working in a kitchen as a sous chef. And so then you worked in the restaurant for a number of years. And that's when you started developing the hot sauce.
exactly. Yeah,
How
yeah.
did that come about
Yeah,
exactly?
18, it might have been like 18 years, but in the restaurant, we have, it's called Bravocado's Bistro in Tofino, and it's a vegan pub, or vegan bistro. And we, being totally vegan vegetarian in the summer times during tourist season, get a lot of East Indian patrons, because Vancouver, our closest major city, has a very, very, very large East Indian population.
What
So
city's
when they
that?
come to visit Tofino, Vancouver, Vancouver
Vancouver.
is just a
Okay.
major Canadian city. It's like an
Yeah.
hour and a half away from Seattle.
Okay.
Um, it So they would always come to Bravocados as a big group, because we were the one place for sure that could, provide vegan vegetarian meals to them. But we were always getting poor reviews because our food wasn't spicy enough. And we're like, well,
Mm-hmm.
it's a bistro. It's we're serving burgers and Caesar
Mm-hmm.
salads. Um, so I was like, okay, we got to get a hot sauce on the menu here, because we got to have something available for when these guests come. So I
Mm-hmm.
started making a hot sauce for the menu.
Wow.
And then that was eventually what became my lime cilantro sauce in my lineup of sauces.
What was the first sauce you created? The lime cilantro?
The lime cilantro one, yeah.
And so, and then you started,
Jalapenos, poblanos.
yeah, what's in there? Jalapenos and, or you can't give
Yeah,
all
it's
the
just a
ingredients.
jalapeno and poblano.
Poblano. Okay. And did you have
Yeah, yeah, like a
experience with,
classic salsa verde.
what was your experience with food from South America or Latin America to create this
Yeah,
hot
so
sauce?
limited. Um, well, um, so growing up, always a fascination with food because of my family. My mom and dad really took it upon themselves to expose my brother and I to multiple different types of foods, strong flavored foods, not necessarily sweet foods right away. They were very strategic about how they introduced food to my brother and I. Um, And because of that, I have a really broad palate. Because of that, my brother has a very limited palate.
Hmm.
um,
Why is that?
but I became, I don't know. He
Yeah.
just doesn't like eating a lot of things.
Okay.
But I became vegan vegetarian when I was in my teens,
Hmm.
and really easy recipes that are very healthful and fast to make and easy for a teenager to do are Latin based recipes. They're really great. As you Now, at the time, research was done in libraries in real books
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
there was no internet.
Yeah.
And so we'd go to the library often as a family, or go to chapters often as a family, chapters Indigo. And I would get recipe books and I'd read them and memorize them, and or get the general idea and the general gist. So that was actually my introduction to kind of Latin cuisine.
And what were some of those dishes do you remember
Oh, just
making?
super simple things. Beans, tacos, just
Uh-huh.
really simple things.
Yeah.
Um, but ways of building flavor is what I remember mostly. How they built the flavors, the techniques that you apply. So roasting things, slow sautéing your garlic and your onions before you add your peppers, before you add your chilies, or your was a lot of the takeaway that I took from those books. And then um, yeah, I was always obsessed with cooking. Even in university, I'd cook for friends. I didn't do a lot of eating, and part of being a person who doesn't do a lot of eating is an obsession with cooking and then giving out food, so then people don't notice that you're not totally consuming a lot of food. And so throughout university, I would practice different dishes that I would see and learn and find and wanted to make, but didn't totally want to eat, because I didn't totally want to eat in general. And that's how I learned Latin cuisine. But I had never gone to Mexico. I had never gone to a Latin country. I had never, like, but I had always had a fascination. So I just started. I was like, okay, I can try. I'm good at cooking and I've learned about it. So I'll try.
So it's really interesting. I want to ask you about were so interested in food and cooking, but you said you weren't eating a lot. So can you explain that a little further? Like what was going on there?
Well, I think I was like a classic kind of born in the 80s, raised in the 90s experience for a lot of women. I was a gymnast as well.
Mm,
And uh, I was bigger, considered bigger for women at the time, because I've ended up nearly 5'8". I'm just slightly under. And, so I was growing fast as a young girl. And so in gymnastics at the time, especially, it was all about slenderness, not power. Now it's about power. And gymnasts are like, pound for pound, some of the most muscular athletes out there.
yeah.
But at the time, it was more about skinny. And you weren't taught, but somewhere along the lines, you like picked up the notion of food restriction as an option for uh, body maintenance.
Mm,
And when your coaches, I was struggling to get the last half rotation of a back layout full, which is this move in gymnastics. And it was suggested that it was potentially because of my size, and maybe not even in like a derogatory way. Who knows? Kid brain just was like, okay, I have to get smaller.
mm,
And and then that kind of continued on for a long time because I was the biggest of my friends, and um, the value of women in terms of beauty wasn't put on strength, though I was quite muscular, and I was, so I was constantly trying to keep up with um, just the body maintenance and body maintenance techniques of the 90s.
mm, mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So there's also just a lot of, it feels like, like that Virgo nature of just, well, I can only have this much, I can only eat that. It's
Yeah.
very, sort of measured. So, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that sounds like a lot. That's I feel for you with that. It's like all you're making all this great food, and you're in your mind, you're like, well, I can't eat any of it because otherwise I'm going to be too big, and I'm not going to look like the way a woman's supposed to look.
It's funny. I'm sure that was a thought somewhere in my brain, but it actually wasn't an active thought.
Right. It's an
After a
unconscious
couple of
one.
years, you're just kind of like not hungry.
Yeah.
You've convinced yourself that you're not hungry.
Huh.
And I just love making food. And no, none for me, thanks. I'm not
Yeah.
hungry. Go ahead.
Huh.
I wanted to make it for you,
Yeah.
you know?
Hmm.
And it becomes a little dance. But I don't think the only time when you really put yourself down, or when I really put myself down, was just when I was doing my like nightly body assessments, staring at myself
Mm.
in the mirror, being mean about it.
Mm.
Um, that was, but it wasn't during the day or actively in the moment. Or I was
Yeah.
very judgmental about fast food or food that's bad for you growing up. Like when Cinnabon first came in to
Mm.
Canada, I was just like, ew. That is a month's worth of fat. Like, how could you even think about putting that in your body? Um,
Oh my God. And so,
but now I'm like, give me the Cinnabon.
oh
Let's
yeah,
go.
okay. So you've shifted your whole
Like,
frequency.
oh, no.
Are you still vegan vegetarian?
No, I was for just slightly over 2 decades. But then I experienced some health problems that brought me back onto the uh, omnivore type
And that
diet.
happened this last
So
February in 24, February 24,
no, 2022.
2022. Right.
2022.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think we were working together when you first had meat for the first time. It was,
Yeah,
or we
yeah.
started working right after
Oh,
that.
oh,
Yeah.
so then it was 23. It was 23 because we started working together in 23. So yeah,
No,
it was
we
February
started working together in
23.
22. In 2020,
Oh,
the first
okay.
time I met you was March of 22.
Oh, okay. Then yeah, it was immediately after I started eating meat.
Yeah. Right. I remember talking about that with you. Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about
But I
Tofino.
didn't have
Yeah.
much experience with like Latin food in general,
Yeah.
so making salsas. But I had a ton of experience with unadulterated arrogance. So I I, for some reason, believe that I can do anything so long as I just read about it a little bit. I'm like, oh,
Mm.
yeah, I got it. It's no problem. And especially when it comes to food. So I just embarked upon making it. But just shortly after I started making the hot sauce at the restaurant, I had an opportunity to go sailing in Mexico for 3 months. And I did that.
Where'd you go?
And I sailed along a tall ship from Cabo San Lucas to Zihuatanejo
Mm-hmm.
and back up to Puerto Vallarta. And along that whole trip, I just made it my mission to learn about salsas and sauces. At every place we stopped to eat, I'd ask about their family recipe. Why do you do that? What's the common sauce in this region? Why do you guys choose that? And just asked as many questions as I could while I was down there about hot sauce and learned about it. And then kind of came back to Canada. I went to Nova Scotia in 2019 for a wedding, and Nova Scotia has this iconic hot sauce. It's called Dave's World Famous Wing Sauce.
Okay.
And Dave's is everywhere in Nova Scotia. It's in every pub, it's in every grocery store. They haven't changed the recipe, the packaging, the marketing since the 60s. Like this stuff
Wow.
is going nowhere and they love it. And I was like, Tofino is a good place for an iconic hot sauce and we don't have one.
Yeah.
And my parents kind of challenged me a little bit to make it, and I didn't think anything of it. I just kind of said that, and it wasn't until 2 years after that that I actually started the business.
Okay. And so what was the impetus of starting the business?
COVID.
COVID. Tell me what happened.
um,
You were bored, sitting. The restaurant was closed. You had nothing to do. Was it that or?
no, no, not even. The restaurant was open. We worked through the whole thing. We did all the adjustments that all the restaurants do. We did like pre-made meal kits. We did grocery bags. We adjusted everything to be a takeout only kind of operation. We made our parking lot a patio so you could be outside. Like we did all the adjustments. We worked through the whole dang thing. Um, Financially, very lucrative. You know, you got nowhere to spend your money because you got nowhere to go, and everybody who's there were so many people eating out, especially in Canada and especially in Tofino. So it was really good. But I saw some of the worst in humanity
What? What happened?
working in the public service sphere. Just the way that people decided to treat us, treat each other, trying to keep the chairs 6 feet apart, or this person moved, or that, and the inflamed reactions from a place of like fear and control. You really got to witness.
Yeah.
And I wasn't totally sold on the restaurant industry as my path. I just I love working at Bravocados, but just the restaurant industry. I had been a server for many years. And like, I don't know that this is for me for long term, and I don't like what I'm experiencing here. The judgment, the imposed sense of. I really the final straw for me was when the government said that we had to start looking at people's vaccination passes to let people access food.
Oh my God.
For like they can't come into the restaurant unless they're vaccinated, right? Was the rule.
Yeah. It's
And
insane.
I was like, I am neither judge nor juror.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what in all of this is right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I'm committed to what the government is doing is necessarily right. And I don't know that I'm committed to what society is doing is necessarily right. I believe there's righteousness happening amongst all of this wrongness. And I don't believe I'm a person who's to decree who can or cannot access food when they need it.
Crazy. Yeah. Wild.
And obviously I could recommend to people to take takeout, but it just really hurt me the day that happened. And I looked at Dave. I felt so terrible for the owner. I looked at Dave. I said, Dave, you got to fire me. You got to fire me. And he said, why? And I was like, I won't do it. You're going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
I won't do it.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that to people. You got to let me go. You got to fire me. And he was like, I'm not firing you. Just like take a minute, do some roll-ups, take a minute. But it really hurt me. It hurt my feeling. It hurt deeper than what it was a position I never thought I'd be in, to decide who was right or wrong for their own personal choices.
It's really insane how
that was
how they did that, where it's like they put people that are making a hourly wage and made them responsible for implementing their asinine policies. It's like, no, you need to come down here. Yeah.
Society.
Yeah, the people that work in a grocery store, the people that work in a restaurant, they have to be the gatekeepers, the ones that say, no, you're not allowed to do this. It's like, I didn't sign up for this. That's not what my job is, to serve food. My job is not to implement your political policies. That's not my job.
And at the time, I had people on staff. I think Alex he was a wee babe. He was like 22. And I'm like, okay, let me put this 22-year-old kid in charge of society.
It's passing the buck.
I'm sorry.
That's what the upper echelon of the politics do. It's like, not my fault. It's their fault. I'd rather have a 22-year-old, make a really difficult decision than me. That's how it feels.
And it put us at risk because a lot of people were like, these rules are stupid. They wanted to vocalize their
Taking it out on
grievances
you.
against these rules.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I had to remind so many people, I'm like, hey, I'm at the bottom of the ladder
Yeah.
in terms of governmental control.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just so you know, like when you file your memo with me, it's not getting to the prime minister. I'll just let you know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's he and I don't know each other, just so you know.
Yeah.
Like, and so it was so weird to me that this was what we were experiencing, and for some reason my brain was like, you know what would be easier than this?
Quitting.
Start a business.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But wait, before you did that, like, so what happened when you said you're gonna you told Dave fire me, and he said no, and so you stayed on. But did you implement these rules where it's like you got to show me your vaccine passport, or did you like skirt the rules?
Yeah, we followed the rules for the most part, and there were times there were. I just tried to never be at the door when somebody came in. And when somebody came to the door, I just was always conveniently unavailable to, and I don't really know what the servers otherwise totally did. I just, if they let people in that they knew didn't have vaccine passports or not, some people did a great job of having fake ones, I know. So, but I don't, Bravocados followed the rules, and I just made sure that I just wasn't part of the rules.
But it was at that point that you said, okay, I need to step out on my own because I can't be a part of this.
Yeah. When customers are throwing things, when Alex is having to come get me nearly every day because I just told everybody, I was like, look, the minute somebody gets a little heated, you just come get me. Don't try to navigate a conversation on your own. All to all the younger staff, I was like, look, I just sit at a baseline kind of pissed off, so I'm ready to launch anytime. Like you don't worry about it. Like, you just come get mama and I'll protect all the baby bears. Like, you don't just don't even reply and just come get me. So, which is it's not totally true, but I didn't want them to have to navigate any of that. They were all in their 20s, in their early 20s, mid 20s. And I just thought this was, it's not something that they should have to navigate the angry ramblings of a 51-year-old man.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll weather that storm. I was born at a time when we were rougher cut diamonds and born in the 80s. All you little 90s kids, you can 2000s. These are all 2000s kids. So,
yeah. Wow.
They're sweet little babies. But that was what told me. I was like, okay, this isn't the industry for me.
And now you're not there anymore. You're fully in the hot sauce.
Yeah, fully in the hot sauce. And actually, I do still have another job where I'm a chef for a local business in town that does food distribution.
What is that?
So in town, because we're a rural community, we have a local organization that has a network across island of all local farmers and local producers across Vancouver Island and British Columbia, and we work to get all that local goods to the region over here, because otherwise our population wouldn't have access to BC grown produce or meats or eggs or dairy. So by way of the nature of what the Tofino Hot Culinary Guild does, they have some food waste. And I was hired as the staff chef to repurpose that food waste into staff meals. So I cook I cook 2 hot meals and snacks for a staff of upwards of 20 people in the summertime, twice a week.
Cool.
And then I also make the hot sauce full time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do people get your hot sauce? It's all over Canada, or is it just on the
Well,
island?
it's all over Canada, not so much in the US. US, you have to order online, tofinohotsauce.ca.
Yes.
Canada, right now, I'm in 55 stores, 55-ish stores across Vancouver Island, the British Columbia Lower Mainland, and into Alberta.
Okay.
So kind of
So
across
two
provinces
provinces,
now.
yeah. Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
what
Mm-hmm.
what is it like being a business owner? Like what is that experience for you? You're doing it all on yourself, or you have a staff with you, or it's just a
I
solo?
do it all on my own.
Yeah.
Apart from the various wonderful people of my network who generously support me when they can see me crashing or needing it. Um, I have, always the people whose couches I pull up on and people who come to help me at times. But yet, doing it all on my own and being an entrepreneur truly is something I never saw for myself. I never saw it. I had friends who would suggest it years past, and I'd be like, "You're crazy. I think being a business owner is the dumbest thing anybody could do." Just fully against it.
Yeah.
I thought nothing of it. I was like, no, it sounds like hell. I don't want to do that. And then I did it.
Is it hell?
And it's hell.
Is it? No.
Yeah, it is.
Oh.
Yeah.
But there's some rewards to it, no?
It's so hard. And so luckily, like we talked about earlier, I am quite addicted to challenges. I have this like masochistic pleasure out of really hard things. But if you don't have that, I see why most people don't do it or close it. The amount of times that you're hit with surprises of 40% cost increases, or this supplier no longer is supplying, with food, there's very high risk. There's a lot of loss. There's it's just so interesting. And then on the other side, just it's so hard as a small business producer. People look at you and have actually said to me, "Why should I buy this instead of Frank's? Why should I buy this?"
Is that
instead
another hot sauce is Frank's?
Yeah, like Frank's hot sauce is like global, right? Or why should I buy this instead of Louisiana? Or why should I buy this instead of sambal? And like all the big ones. Why this instead of Tabasco? And so you are challenged all the time in what we talked about, like graceful communication, compassionate communication, not being insulted. The biggest gift that owning a business has ever given to me is really reducing how much I get insulted. Because it's business. It's not personal.
How do you respond to somebody
asking
like
you
that?
that question.
Yeah.
I don't say anything. I give them a sample.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Yeah. You decide.
and then as they're eating it, I say, "That's why."
And do they buy a bottle then? What is their normal reaction?
Yes. Almost always.
Oh, wow. Tell me about...
Because I didn't know how to answer that question.
Yeah.
Like without being insulting to the other brands and I didn't want to get into that game. They're giant global brands. They're obviously doing something right. Mm-hmm. They can produce at scales that I can't. So their cost is obviously what it is. I argue that maybe they're not supporting, local farmers in a way that is truly fair if they're able to produce it but I don't know their operations. So I didn't know a way to answer the question without being kind of mean about it. So, or like engaging in communication patterns I didn't want to. So I'm just like, it's not going to use any words.
I love it. Let the hot sauce do the talking.
Yes. But it is very rewarding in a lot of very weird ways.
How so?
It is very indirectly rewarding, you know, like, because when we think about the word reward, we think about this like direct experience of happiness, contentment, celebration, gratitude. You know, you think reward, right? Like it comes with like a woo
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. Um, but the rewards that you kind of experience as a business owner aren't that. They are you like reminding yourself that you've overcome yet another obstacle that was put in front of you and somehow managed to pivot yet again. It's you looking at the cash flow sheets that you've spent hours doing and being like, okay, they're done and they show positive results. It's you, you know, having a customer come up to you and be like, this shit's the best. I love this shit.
Mm.
Or, you know, like they're very small. And this author once said, you know, I can't remember his name, but it was from a Celtic book. And he was like, you know, opportunity is often no louder than the beat of your heart, and therefore it is easy to miss. And
Oh.
that's kind of the same as what rewards in small business is that they're often no louder than the beat of your heart, and they're very easy to miss and get like buried in all the to-dos and the missed tasks and the mistakes you made, especially when you're doing it on your own.
Mm. I love that. I love that. I mean, I can relate to some degree, you know, because I guess I'm a small business owner. I mean, I have my astrology practice,
Yeah, sure are.
and so, you know, the reward for me is like when I get that message from somebody that I've never met before that says thank you for what you're doing. I mean, that's like when I
Mm-hmm.
meet someone who's like, when I hear from somebody who I don't know who this person is. You know, sometimes they come from another country and I'm like, you're listening to me over there? Wow, okay. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and you're saying that I'm
Mm-hmm.
helping you. It's like, that's rewarding. I love that. It's like the beating
Yeah.
heart
Yeah, there's
metaphor.
so much that you don't know. Like you and Ingrid didn't know that like on Mondays throughout the winter of 2021, I guess, that
Yeah,
2021, I'm like
yeah,
setting myself up for my weekly transit night and
yes. Wow, yeah,
like how
totally.
much. And it was really meaningful to me. I was going through a lot in that winter, and your two's presence and comedy and humor and me being Virgo, Ingrid being Virgo, you being Scorpio, like I kind of could see myself in a lot of the communication patterns. Like, yeah, so
Yes.
it is very similar for you too, where it's these small kind of assumed rewards. Like I
Hmm.
assume by my sales that people are enjoying my hot sauce, and I get to kind of imagine these meals that people have together where they're enjoying each other's company and the dinner, and somebody uses the sauce and is like, hey, this is delicious, where did you get this? Wow, it really added to the meal. Because
Yes.
that's kind of what I hope to do with it, is to kind of be have it be like a positive addition to people's meal experience.
Yes. Yes. I love that. How
And
did
you just have to assume it. Same with you. Like when you put the
mm,
transit out, you just have to assume that it's a positive part of people's
yeah.
lives.
I hope they like it. Yeah, exactly. Well, what are your plans for Tofino hot sauce moving forward?
You know, I feel so, it's so interesting. I feel so divided. My whole life, even in the environment industry, the biggest thing that I have been obsessed with, into, loving, like, has been the water. It's why I surf. It's why I was obsessed with Blue Crush when I was a kid, the movie.
Yeah, I
It's
remember that.
why I have always been like obsessed with mermaids and whales and swimming and being on the water. And for some reason, it has never been something that I've felt capable of pursuing as my profession. I don't know why.
But you were
And
a
when
part
you
of
go down paths,
yeah, you were part of a national team though.
well, but I mean like being immersed in it, like having my life be the water. Um, and so I work this job like Tofino Hot Sauce. I'm in a kitchen. Well, I was in the kitchen 210 hours last year making the sauce,
Wow.
innumerable hours on the road, 303 hours on the road, driving something like 27,000 kilometers to just distribute the sauce and sell the sauce. And, like I spend so much time so far away from the water. I do love doing the sauce. And it's showing me all these, see this addiction to like helping and solving problems. So like I've learned all these new holes in the system that I'm like, that needs to be fixed. Like Canadian farmers just compost, or if whatever they can't sell of their like seconds fruits or veggies, it just mostly gets composted. Whereas that's the kind of stuff that can be pureed into carrot mash, onion mash, garlic mash that I can use as, because you can buy these things. You can buy 5 kilogram, 22 kilogram drums of onion mash, carrot mash for big major condiment production. You cannot buy that stuff local farmer. It's always big monoculture cropped. You cannot get it.
Why is that?
And I'm like, but that's what I want.
Yeah.
And I also want, like, so now there needs, there's just, and part of me really wants to pursue these things because they'd be so critical for the stabilization of the food system on Vancouver Island and in Canada, and subsequently the world. Because if this is a model that can be grown, then smaller scale California farmers can find a way to get their products into major food production, as well as, selling their retailable products that they grow. So I get addicted to these ideas and I'm like, that's the way I want to go. I want to see chili peppers on the fair trade certified product list because conceivably they're experiencing the same level of oppression as coffee and chocolate because of the global obsession with hot sauce. I want to see a regionalization of our wholesale food product availability, like I just mentioned. I want to see, so I get on this tirade.
Activist.
And
Yeah.
then a big part of me is like, actually, I want to make this business super successful. And then the next 2 years, I want to sell it for $500,000 so that I can finally not be a broke ass bitch and I can go be by the water.
Well, can you scale the business to a way where you can just own the business and other people are making the hot sauce and distributing the hot sauce and you're spending all your day on the water?
I'm sure.
Okay.
I'm sure there is a way. And from this podcast, if anybody listening has the experience and understanding of how to do that, let me know. Because I'm an environmental scientist.
Yeah.
These are all things that I am like, okay, now I have to get a business degree because there's things that I don't know about this world. There's a whole other world that I don't know. And they speak a whole other language. Like you talked about the language of astrology. There's the language of business. And then there's all these veins that exist within it that maybe, and that even the people in the deepest of the business world don't even know about, right? Like, because everything is so intricate.
Yes.
So yes, Scott, that's an idea I've had too, that I just maintain a portion of ownership and that the business becomes its own viable entity without me.
I think that's...
So far, I haven't even learned how to trust one person to hire them and give them my recipe to do it. So we're a long ways.
I think that you need a business partner, and you're a specific manifester, so it's important for you to manifest exactly what you're looking for in a business partner, because you're a seventh house Taurus North Node, which you need that partnership. You need that relationship. Like, relationships are a big theme in your life, and Taurus is money and security. So it's like you need to find that business partner that is going to honor and respect and reflect your values. That's going to say, Lise, first of all, I never want you to change the hot sauce because the reason why I want to get into this is because I love your hot sauce. So I want the hot sauce to maintain its integrity in terms of how you're sourcing it, how you're, because I know you're all about the free trade and right, and how you source everything, and the ingredients are of the highest quality. So how do we maintain that and scale it? But let me do that because I'm a business person and that's my job. So I'm going to figure
Mhm.
out how to scale the business, how to make it profitable while also maintaining the same level of quality that you've created in the hot sauce that we love. And so you're basically, you have that part, you're overseeing the operations, they're overseeing the finance, and then eventually you get somebody who's going to oversee the operations. And Tofino Hot Sauce is a multi-million dollar company, and you're surfing all over the world. So
I hope so.
yes.
I am very ready for that person. It's interesting when we work together, you talked about my North Node a lot. And being a North Node Taurus, that makes me a South Node Scorpio. And I have really lived in that South Node most of my life. And I really struggle to understand how to embody that North Node experience. I seem to be very uncomfortable with the North Node style relationships. Because I think I recently, like, since I've been doing a lot of therapy, and I think recently it's yeah, it's like it comes down to like a control thing in certain areas of my life, but also a trust thing. Like it's interesting how I believe I've been presented with a lot of people who would be very North Node, Taurus, like relationship type people. And I feel like I've just like run to the hills whenever they've come near me. I'm like, no, it's toxic South Node Scorpio attachments only.
Yes, exactly. Give me your
um,
crises and your chaos. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't want to be the crisis and the chaos to someone. So if this attachment feels so secure, that must only mean that I'm the crisis and the chaos because that's my concept, right? Like of just like, if I'm not the one in crisis and chaos, then it must be you. And so like, so but I am very interested to lay that all to rest and let this really great business partner person come into my life because
Good.
I know that there's a ceiling I'm quickly approaching. I also know that I'll be able to break out of that ceiling because of my nature, but I'm going to be too tired
Hmm.
after. It's going to be very tiring. And I would like to be less tired and just more balanced this
Well,
year.
yeah, and that's you have to let somebody else in to help you achieve
Mm-hmm.
your goals and ambitions. Um, I think about everybody that I talk to is they always say the same thing as like what you just said right now. That's so hard with the North Node. And so it is like this is the work that you're developing throughout your life. You really need to just think about your values, what's important to you, and how you can integrate that with another relationship where your values are not being compromised, where it just fits, where their values support your values support their values. There's peace and harmony through that interaction. Now, try to think of it in terms of like you being an advocate for Tofino hot sauce. It's interesting because like you gave me the chart for Tofino hot sauce, and Tofino hot sauce's north node is in the first house, south node is in the seventh house. So it's in Gemini, which is curiosity. So it's like Tofino hot sauce needs to be like courageously curious. And that is kind of like, let's find other people.
Mm-hmm.
Let's learn from other people. Let's connect to different potential business opportunities. We don't have to, decide right now who we're going to connect with or bring into the fold, but let's gather information. Let's listen. Let's learn. Your Chiron is actually
Mm-hmm.
conjunct Tofino's North Node. So it's like you have this wound to communication, to asking questions, And that's exactly what
Yes.
Tofino Hot Sauce needs to do. It needs to ask the questions that are maybe going to make us sound like we don't know what we're talking about, but that's okay because we don't know what we're talking about. Just like I was asking you, like what a periwinkle is or a marmalade. It's like,
Yeah.
you don't know this stuff? I'm like, no, I don't. Like I've heard of it, but I don't really know what it is. So you can't be afraid to ask questions where people might look at you strange, like, you've never heard of that before. You don't know that. Like, yeah,
Mm.
I don't. That's why I'm sorry. I'm not an omnipotent God that knows everything that's ever been known on planet Earth. Like, I have other
Mm-hmm.
things to learn here. That's why I'm here. So ask the questions for Tofino, hot sauce. But there's and actually, this year, like right now, this month, in like January, February is when Saturn is conjunct Tofino's Venus, which means that, maybe there is through going out there in the community. So Tofino Hot Sauce was born with the Sun and Venus and Neptune and Chiron all in the 11th house. So Tofino Hot Sauce is meant to be out there in the
What?
community. Yeah, serious. And not only that, but so there's an 11th house stellium, but also Mercury, the moon, Jupiter, and Saturn are all in Aquarius. So there's 8 planets, 4 that are in Aquarius and 4 that are in the 11th house, which is like, this is the community hot sauce, like this is the
Oh
community
my
hot sauce. And it's
gosh.
taking care of the community, not only by feeding the community, but also taking care of the people that are feeding the hot sauce by providing the ingredients for the hot sauce. So you can be an advocate for the hot sauce by asking the questions that need to be asked in order to bring the right connections for the hot sauce to help this expand. I mean, Tofino Hot Sauce was born with
Mhm.
Jupiter, the planet of luck and expansion, in the 10th house, along with the sun or the moon and Mercury. The moon and Mercury. The sun's in the 11th house, but the moon, Mercury, and Jupiter in the 10th house. So it's about having that confidence that this is what Tofino Hot Sauce is about. It's about ethically sourcing the ingredients. It's about the best flavors, the healthiest flavors. It's like having that sort of mission statement of your values, which you've come to cultivate through your own life in exercising through Tofino Hot Sauce, and then putting that out there in the world and saying, can you help me? Is this something that works for you? How do I do this? I don't know. Do you know
Mm.
somebody that does? I don't know somebody, but maybe this person knows somebody, and just getting that chain going and starting connecting and using that network to help bring in the right business partners for Tofino Hot Sauce. That's what it's about.
Scott, that is really interesting to hear.
Hmm.
One, because especially with its North Node being Gemini, and now Gemini Virgo ruled by the same planet,
Hmm.
but quite abrasive signs towards each other, otherwise, like kind of out and outright.
Right, but they're the
And
Mercury's. Yep.
yeah, and Aquarius, it's so funny because Aquarius has also been a sign that I've struggled with as like interpersonal uh like connections. It's not
Mm.
necessarily a sign that I'm like really attracted to naturally.
It's an odd
Um
match for
but
Virgo,
it's
but
really
yeah.
interesting. Yeah, but it's interesting because there have been times that I have been acting or speaking for, Tofino Hot Sauce for the business. And I feel like I'm of two minds, that I'm like, there's like me, Lise, the person who's just like, what are you doing? And then there's the actions that are happening that is like, this is Tofino Hot Sauce, and I'm not Lise Richard right now. And it actually made me think of Ingrid and her talking about how in the sex industry you have to have this persona, this like
Exactly.
that kind of helps you approach the business.
Hmm.
And I was like, it took me a couple of years, but it was just like last summer or maybe even this fall, that I was like, I didn't even realize that I'm me, yes, but I have a different persona when I am frontward facing for the business. There's this
Mm.
different kind of confidence in this step. I do ask so many more questions than make statements, whereas personally, my form of communication actually is quite statement based.
Mm.
And I noticed these changes that I was like, oh, it's really interesting. And I am not naturally as a person when somebody's like, oh, I should introduce you to. As a person, personally, I'm naturally just kind of like, no thanks. I'm sure they're great. No thanks.
Yeah.
But for the business, I'm like, yeah, sure. Introduce me to them. What are they all about? Oh, they bake cookies. Oh, but they started their own line, or they've used co-packers. Oh, okay, yeah, I'd love to talk to them.
Yes.
And I've just tried to ask as many questions of as many people as I possibly could, because I was like, look, I don't know what the shit is going on here. I am a person who started a business, and all I really do know how to do is cook well. And that's all I'm standing on. So I just tried to be the learner always and not be this like person of authority when it can be authoritative, but not like, I'd like just be the learner. Like, hey, I'm here. I'm the new kid on the block for the hot sauce. Yes, I make a good product. Yes, I'm confident in my product. Please help me learn so I can establish this business as a formidable opponent in the condiment industry.
Yes.
And so that's really interesting to hear that astrology around it, because that's kind of what I've been naturally embodying is this.
That's it.
And wanted Tofino Hot Sauce to be a hot sauce of the community. That's why I called it Tofino Hot Sauce
Exactly.
for
It's
Tofino, was
not
that it was
Lise
meant to be
Richard hot
iconic.
sauce. Yeah. It's not Lise Richard hot sauce. It's Tofino hot sauce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Tofino. And I wanted it to become synonymous with people's experience of this region, of good times together, of good meals together, of, people love coming here with their families and sunny days or big storm days. And all of this place can be so evocative with the grand nature that is around it. And I wanted the sauce to be equally as evocative, either in flavor or conversation. And so it's very interesting. Yeah.
Yes. I love it. I love it. Well, Tofino hot sauce is also a specific manifester. So sit down with the hot sauce and come up with your specific manifestation of what you're looking for a business partner. When you want it to happen, how you want it to happen, what is this person what expertise are they going to bring to the table? And then once you're specific about what it is you want, then you know what to ask for. Then you know what to look for. Then you know what questions to ask. And it's okay if you don't know exactly right now, but by asking more questions, you're going to get more specific. And through that,
what is the line of which you're talking about specific manifester, or what other types of manifestors?
There's specific and non-specific manifester. That's human design.
Okay.
So, it's indicative. If you look at the human design, it's like a outline of like a body, and there's 4 arrows up around the head. The bottom right arrow, if it's pointed to the head, it's specific. If it's pointed away from the head, it's non-specific. So, this is your specificity. I think astrologically comes from that Taurus North Node, where you have to know what you like. You have to know what you don't like. You have to know what you want. And you have to know how to implement that and negotiate for that in your relationships. Because even when you sit down with a potential business partner, you're going to need an attorney, a lawyer there that's going to help, get through the contract. And you're going to be like, this doesn't feel right to me, or this does feel right to me. But you need to sit with it. You need to sit with the contract. You need to sit with the negotiation. You need to take some time to really allow the emotions to flow through you, and before you can make a decision. And you'll make the decision when you have that clarity, when it's just simple. It's like, because I know this is it because it feels right. I feel peaceful in knowing that this is the decision. I'm not worried. I'm not anxious. I feel peaceful. This feels right. This feels like me in the ocean on the surfboard, and I'm just like at peace. That's what this is.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Mm-hmm.
Lise.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excited.
Before we go, I want to hear more about your love of the water and your experience in the water and what that is for you. It's interesting because when you look at Tofino Hot Sauce, Tofino's Venus, Sun, and Neptune are all in Pisces. And in January,
Ah,
Tofino Hot Sauce has its Venus return, where Venus is returning to where it was when it was born.
I love
And Venus
that.
is exalted in Pisces, it's in a position of
Right.
power. Neptune is the planetary ruler of Pisces, and Pisces rules the ocean. So I really see like Tofino Hot Sauce as being the thing that brings your dream of spending every day in the ocean into reality.
Oh, interesting. I hope so. Um, I've even ignored business mentors like advice on not associating the hot sauce too much with surfing because they're like it could be pigeonholing, and I'm like, that's where I wanted to go.
Yeah, yeah.
um, but the love of the ocean, like just Nova Scotian, I think the big difference between the Maritimes and BC, like Canadian Maritimes, they're called the Maritimes. We are a maritiming people. It is in if your family is of mine, I don't know how many have this experience, but because my family was a maritiming family, the ocean was everything. My grandfather was a tall ship fisherman. He fished for lobster. My grandmother was the lighthouse operator in a small fishing community where people went out to sea and they didn't come back.
Wow.
The grandeur of the ocean was always a part of my life, where the place where my dad grew up was a cliff, and then immediately the Atlantic Ocean, and the storms would just crash up this rock and you'd see this bright spray of the whiteness of the ocean. And um, where my mom grew up in Cape Breton, the family bungalow, as it's called in Nova Scotia, the family cottage, was on the Bredor Lakes, the third largest salt-fed lake in the world.
Wow.
And so I got to spend time in these super magical places. And even right near where I grew up, there was good like storm watching, there was good surfing, there was great beaches. And we just spent a lot of time connected to the water. My mom used to say that like if there was water, I was getting in it. It was like I was trying to control a lab, like there's Lise, she's wet again. I always needed changes. And the ocean is something that even I have this vivid memory as a child in this beach called Torbay Beach, which is near where my dad grew up. Very strong undertow and rip currents at this beach because of its rocky nature. And one day, my parents specifically said, "Don't go in the water above your waist." That was how you could best control the undertow. And I did that. But when a big wave came, I like curled up into a ball in and let the wave take me. And then next thing you know, I'm like sucked out. But I wasn't scared at all. I just let the next wave take me and I went into a little ball and I was just getting spun around, by the undertows and the rip currents and everything. And then next thing you know, my mom is screaming, everybody's upset. I make my way back to the beach. But I really remember that feeling of just being like tossed around in the water and having no sense of fear, having just
Mm.
this really wonderful sense of awe and bemusement and kind of like fantastical nature of the world around me and the water especially. I just love this like anti-gravity
Mm.
nature of the water. And I've always loved the folklore around mermaids and selkies in particular. My mom's mother used to tell me about
What's a
selkies,
selkie?
which is It's a Scottish siren.
Mm.
So anywhere around the world where land touches water, it doesn't matter if it's a lake, a pond, a river, a creek, an ocean, a sea, people have had myths of sea sirens, sirens, water nymphs. And for the Scots, for the Celts, this was Selkies. So this is seal people who shed their skin at certain times in the moon cycle, often under full moons, and they dance and they frolic and they play. And they are often, the stories are of women, but there are stories of male Selkies. But they're the most beautiful people you'll ever see. And if you can find and trap the skin of the Selkie, they will be your forlorn lover forever, because first and always their love is to the sea.
Mm.
And so this is the way that the Scots and the Celts kind of explained out people who had good luck in fishing, unexplained good luck in fishing, that they were Selkie though, because they come from Selkie. Or people who are a little weird or a little mystical or a little mythical, they're Selkie people. Often if they had dark eyes, they were Selkie. My grandmother told me that I was Selkie because of my blue eyes. She was like, when you got taken from the water, you trapped a bit of it in your eyes.
Wow. Oh, it's so beautiful. I
And I
love
used
that.
to love that.
Yes.
I
Well, I'm
I was like,
looking
it's true.
I'm looking at your astrological code, and I'm like, where is the ocean, that connection to the ocean for Lise? And I see it in multiple places. Like, first of all, your Jupiter, the planet of luck and expansion, the original, the planetary ruler of Pisces, the traditional ruler of Pisces is Jupiter. That's in your fourth house, which is your roots, your bloodline, your childhood, your upbringing. That's also aligning with both of your nodes, the north and south node. So being a part of the ocean is a part of your soul's purpose. It's aligning with your part of fortune in Gemini in the eighth house. So this is tapping into that curiosity and curiosity through intimacy. And it's opposing your Venus in Leo in the 10th house, which Venus is the senses and relationships. So, and also 10th house career, and Venus is in Leo, which is the heart. Your fifth house, which is the house of fun and pleasure, is in Pisces, the ocean. And your sixth house, the house of work and daily routine, is also in Pisces. So it's like you take pleasure in the ocean, and you also want the ocean to be a part of your everyday. So, but the connection of
Mm-hmm.
Jupiter, fourth house, aligning with your nodes, your part of fortune, and your Venus, it's just saying like you need to put yourself out there to be curious about people in the same way that you're curious about the ocean. And when you get into contact with one, get into that little ball and just see where it takes you, and know that it'll spit you out eventually, and you'll see if you want to go back in or not. But that will hopefully give you
Right.
some of the courage that you need to really engage with a potential business partner that's going to help you ascend towards achieving those goals of making Tofino Hot Sauce a more of a self-sufficient company that's going to give you the freedom to. Your 10th house, the house of achievement, is in Cancer, which is ruled by the crab. So you'll know that you've
Mm-hmm.
achieved when you're on the beach every day of your life.
Yeah.
That's where
Which
we're
in
sending you.
arguably is, I mean,
You're already there.
yeah, arguably then I've already achieved it
Exactly.
because I
Yes.
live in I can look out my window here and be at the beach, and I can be at the beach in 5 minutes, right there. So
You live on
I
an
do
island.
have the water in my. I just got to
Yes.
work real hard for it, but I
Mm.
do like that. Yeah, it's true. It's definitely. I think something about the water also helps with the Aries moon because of that absolute unadulterated arrogance that comes with an Aries moon, that the water really helps remind you of your particle size,
Mm.
and that you know, how like just on New Year's Day, I had a very, very, very near miss. I might not have been here today
What
because
happened?
of the strength of the ocean. I made a bad call. I made a bad call about where I went out to surf. I made a bad call about where I paddled out, and it got me into trouble with some rocks,
So what
and
happened?
rocks that are deadly.
What, you crashed in? You
I
almost
got
crashed.
myself out of it because
You
I
were.
abandoned so I stand up paddleboard, and so I had to abandon my paddle. My paddle has, I actually said as I was letting it go, I went, Neptune, this is for you because today you're not getting me.
Wow.
And I abandoned my paddle, and I timed, I was just basically getting swept in a rip current that was stronger than I had anticipated. And it was sweeping me towards these rocks into this bay that actually has some high tide caverns that you drown in. And I was in between sets when this was happening, and there was a big set on the horizon coming in. I could see as I was like troughing, I was like, oh shit, okay, there's some big waves coming through, some 8 to 10 footers, and I have this one chance to get myself out of here. Otherwise, the potential is to be knocked unconscious and drug into the caves. So I just timed it. I took 2 waves where I got smashed first on my right side, and then I got smashed then on my left side. And I knew that. I was like, okay, you're going to take 1, 2 on the third wave. You're going to latch on like a freaking monkey to the rocks. You're going to let your paddle go. Because the other 2, I was like trying to think about how I could save my paddle. And I was like, no, you need all your hands.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that in between as I'm getting smashed up the rocks. I'm like, all right, Neptune, here you are. And then on the third one, I just spider monkeyed. I got smashed onto the rocks, goosh, kind of thing, and hung on as hard as I could while the waves sucked back out because it's trying to suck you back out, right? And then in between, in the like 4 seconds or 3 seconds that I had between the next wave coming, I just scrambled up the rocks and let my board was attached to a leash, and I let the board just bounce along the rocks and I was like, whatever, if it doesn't stay on attached to the leash, whatever, if it does, great. And I scrambled up out of the wave line. The board ate it a couple times against the rocks. And then when the sets died, I was able to pull the board back up and spent the next 20 minutes walking along the rocks on the high tide, getting myself back to the beach.
Wow.
It was
Wow.
scary. It was
That
scary.
is, and you saved the board, but you lost the paddle.
Yeah. Lost the paddle scared.
Wow, Lise. Wow. Oh my
Yeah.
god. What a way
Yeah.
to
And
initiate yourself into the year. So I mean, like, just like, let's think about the esoteric symbolism there, of.
well, what was crazy, Scott, is normally I do this surf as a way to start my year off right. I try to get the first wave, have a nice, enjoyable time, first light, first of the year. It's a big tradition of mine, has been happening since like 2014. This is my 10th. Yeah. So, and this year and you talk about that intuition, and that this moment was actually what I like, sitting with your feelings. So I had a full internal conversation before I paddled out at that location, and my arrogance put me out there because in this internal conversation, the voice which was embodied by this person who I like to be a bit combative with, should have noticed that, was like, are you sure you're going out here? And I immediately, my ego popped up and was like, yeah, of course, something new, something untraditional, a place I don't surf very often. Yeah, I'm going to go here. It's empty. It's big. I can do it. And I had this kind of ego-based back and forth with this entity in my head, and it got me into trouble. That was exactly what you're talking about, is sitting and listening without the ego, trying to protect the original decision,
Mm-hmm.
because that got me in trouble. It really got me in a lot of trouble. But it was ultimately the way I looked at it, because I do take this moment as a signifier for the year. Yes, if you look at it from the outset, it could like somebody might look at that and be like, oh my God, your year is going to be shit. What the
Hmm.
hell? It's going to be near misses and like life threatening. And yes, potentially. However, I was like, okay, one, I have an ease of letting go of things that are otherwise seemingly important, but might not be for the future. The paddle, right? It's a very important piece of equipment to me. But was it necessarily important for my future? No, not at that moment. Let it go. I also was super calm, even though it was very scary. And I was very recognizing of how scary and how life threatening the moment that I was in just was. I also felt so calm. I was being a bit sarcastic in my head too. I was like, ah, yeah, of course. Of course. I'm kind of mouthing off to Poseidon and Neptune. I was like, you would, Poseidon. I'm like, oh, a little pissy Poseidon here today. And I'm just having these like, quick moments, but I'm like, okay, Lise, life threatening moment. You can get out of this. Just let the paddle go, grab the rock, climb out. It's no problem. You're going to be fine. And to feel that level of calm confidence in such a gnarly moment is actually my takeaway for the year.
Hmm.
That kind of what we talked about a lot when we were working together in the cosmic pathway. I really am coming to a good place of having grace and compassion under fire, and having this like calm confidence that doesn't require the same bravado that I had in 2007 with Minister Baird. It doesn't require the same level of abrasiveness, because it is just this more deeply internal thing that doesn't have to have this massive outward expression.
I love that you're bringing this all up because 2007, 2 plus 7 is 9. 2025, 2 plus 2 plus 5 is 9.
Oh,
Both of those are
yeah.
9 years, and the 9 year is an ending. It signifies an ending.
That's right.
And you literally on day one experience an ending for your paddle, a transformation, to your whole, like the whole process of how you're looking ahead at the year. So, it's about endings because 9 is the final single digit, and it's about the wisdom that you receive from the ending. So, thinking about what we were talking about earlier, maybe it's the ending of you doing Tofino Hot Sauce on your own, bringing in a business partner. You might have to let
Yeah.
something go, some of the control, by letting go of the paddle, to climb up the
Oh, that's
rocks.
true.
Yes. Yes.
That's in order to climb up the
To
rocks.
ascend to goals and ambitions, to climb to goals and
I
ambitions.
love that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know what I did when I got to the top of the rocks?
What?
I turned around and I gave the middle
I
finger to the
knew it. I
ocean
knew
and I
you were going
went,
to say that.
you
I could just see you up there saying like, "Fuck yo, you're not gonna get me today,"
try again.
Exactly. I'm Lise Richard.
Try
I'm
again
I'm of
tomorrow.
a maritime family. Yes, I
Oh,
love it.
that's it. I was like, it's going to take more than that to get me out of here, baby.
I love it. I love it, Lise. Well, on that note, Lise, I gotta say you are such an inspiration. You are such a beautiful, courageous spirit, and I'm so honored to know you. I'm so honored to have you on the podcast, to hear your story. I just, can you share with our audience where they can find you on social media or your website for the hot sauce? If they're interested in reaching out for you, maybe they're a business person and they're hearing this and like, I love this woman. I want to connect with her. How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me.
Mm.
It's been so fun to get to know you and listening to the podcast first and then working with you and your natural comfort and ease with people and ability to connect has been so wonderful to have. And I've appreciated having you in my ear every week for 4 years. Um, and the way that people can get a hold of me is just the place and the stuff, Tofino Hot Sauce on all the platforms. I'm only on Instagram because that's the most that I can handle. And tofinohotsauce.ca is the best way to get a hold of me. And happy to always send sauce to people individually or for their restaurants or for their other food operations. I make wholesale 2-liter mason jars for people and farmers or producers in the local BC region. Happy to reach out to you too. And I appreciate you letting me come talk. I hope something of interest or value comes to the people who listen.
I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will, Lise. You're an amazing storyteller. You have an amazing story, and you're an inspiration to me, and I'm sure everyone who's listening to you right now. And so we'll put all of that information, your contact information, in the show notes. But once again, thank you for your time, your energy, and sharing your story with us. Very honored by you. All
Thank you,
right.
Scott.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Weekly Transit, interviews and conversations from an astrological lens. This episode was produced by me, Scott Tejerian. Music written by Ben Leinbach from Listen Deep by Amber Herzog Lyman. If you're interested in being a guest on the Weekly Transit, you can email me at scott@theweeklytransit.com. Wishing you all the best as you ride the planetary waves.